Welcome back to Weekend Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Time for our monthly chat with Iowa Ag Secretary Mike Naig. Secretary, thanks for taking the time to visit with us.
Great to be back with you.
So we're getting close. I mean, we're chomping at the bit. The weather's been nice. It looks like conditions are good. Of course, today as we talk, Mother Nature throwing us some more cold weather. And so people are trying to get that field work at
Right.
least started. What are you seeing out in your travels around the state?
Well, first of all, I know that folks are anxious, and you can definitely feel that. I am too, and I actually have been traveling here quite a bit recently, and you see evidence of some field work and certainly some anhydrous going on, and some livestock operations putting some manure out on the fields, and so getting that work done that needs to get done before spring planting. But I think right now, as you say, Mother Nature's telling us to tap the brakes just a little bit. But boy, I think as soon as it's fit. Folks are really going to push hard to get moving. Of course, thinking about this year versus last year, of course, we also spend a lot of the year talking about drought, and I know that there's parts of the state, particularly Western Iowa, Northwestern Iowa, that are watching that drought very, very carefully, and we sure do need some precipitation here once we get the crop in the ground.
So how are things looking at the Naig homestead there? Have you gotten any work done out there?
No, everything's still in the shed so far, but again, we're really anxious to get going. And boy, I think next week, if we can get some sunshine, get these soil temps to move in the right direction, that we'll be wanting to get out and make some dust.
All right. So, of course, with that time of the year, also, we know the state legislative session is going to be wrapping up and, talk about some of the things that have
Right.
been accomplished and maybe some things you're hoping still get accomplished before that wraps up.
Yeah, you bet. This is really the end run here. Where the next couple of weeks, we expect that the legislature will finish their work. It's been a good session. Some really important topics, and again, it's really important to remember. The state of Iowa is thinking about how do we strategically invest in the future of our state and in growing our state versus some other states that are trying to figure out how to cut to keep the lights on. So let's never forget that, and that doesn't happen by accident. On the ag front, of course. We're still working on getting our budget through the process, and that's really the focus now of the legislature is getting these budgets passed. And I asked for some additional funding to help us with value-added ag grants program to help establish some new markets for producers, help our meat lockers out. We also asked for some additional dollars for foreign animal disease prevention to work with our livestock producers. And of course, the other big piece of legislation for the ag community and really for all Iowans is the biofuels bill. And the governor proposed a bold step to increase the use of ethanol and biodiesel in the state. And I know that legislators are hard at work trying to figure out what they can get passed this year that'll make a significant difference in that regard.
Has there been any movement? I know there was concerns by some fuel distributors. Has there been any compromise on that front to help kind of appease their concerns and get that done before the end of the session?
Yeah, I think there has been. You see bits and pieces of language that's being negotiated, and I think legislators are very much aware and sensitive to that idea that, for some small fuel marketers in particular, in some of our smaller towns, or maybe a location that maybe a company that's only got one or two locations, that if they had to have a significant infrastructure upgrade, that could actually end up results in them going out of business. And so I think there's an effort to accommodate for that and to continue to provide assistance to fuel marketers to make those investments and upgrades that they need. The Renewable Fuel Infrastructure Program is something that we administer at the Department of Ag. We're really proud of that work, and I hope that what we end up with is some additional dollars to again help those fuel marketers, because we can have the best product in the world, but if we can't get it into gas tanks, then we don't see the benefit for the environment, consumers paying less, or for that great market that we know we need for farmers.
And one good thing for rural America as well is just in the last few days, the legislature approving rural broadband investment as well.
Right.
And that's been a big deal too.
Oh, it's tremendously important. And we've only been reminded of the importance of that in the last 12 months. We all knew it was important. It's really essential to just your quality of life, but also to doing business. And largely now we're using it for education purposes as well, and precision agriculture, precision conservation. We need affordable, reliable broadband connectivity all across this country. So even when at the federal level, there's a lot of talk about infrastructure. Well, we think that infrastructure needs to be focused on things, or certainly include things that matter to rural America. Infrastructure like broadband, like housing, like child care centers, those types of things. Those are things that'll matter for workforce in a state like Iowa. So both at the federal level and at the state level, we need to be very strategic about what we're investing in.
You know, it was interesting. I was out with Congresswoman Axney last week, and she was hearing about and talking about broadband and the infrastructure. And she made the comment that it only took a little bit of a disruption to the food supply to get the attention of more of the urban representatives to ask just what's going on in rural America, and why are they having so much trouble keeping up. And she said, and for after so many years of talking about it, that their legislators are finally starting to hear that there are kids having to go to McDonald's to upload their homework.
Right. And, and that's part of the reality of getting something through. Even a legislature in Des Moines, is you do have different parts of the state. You've got urban and rural districts, and certainly that's the case in Washington, D.C. And so it's that's why it's so important. We say this all the time, but that's why it is so critically important that the state of Iowa have an effective voice in Congress. And to the extent that we can be united, the governor and me and our congressional delegation, on a bipartisan basis, pushing in the same direction on things that matter, that's when you get some things done. That's when you can get people's attention. And those are the types of efforts that we need to continue to see on biofuels and infrastructure. And we'll continue to work in that direction.
So another topic we're going to hit today is, of course, IDALS is working with education on foreign animal disease, and you guys have got another session coming up as well.
Right, we do. And this is a series of webinars that our team, the state vet, and Dr. Kaizen and his team have been putting together and targeting various issues. I think the next one that we're going to have coming up will be on foot and mouth disease, a very important topic for a variety of producers. But there's a series of these webinars that'll play out throughout the next year. But I think April 21st, go to iowaagriculture.gov for more information. But we'd really encourage producers, folks involved in the supply chain in various ways, that this is an ever-present threat. The threat of a foreign animal disease, the threat of shutting down trade and exports for a state like Iowa. That's a big deal. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to prevent disease, and then be prepared to respond if we have to.
All right. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time for this month, Secretary. As we get ready to wrap up, we know we talked earlier, farmers are chomping at the bit to get going. Any message for them as they get ready for that starter's pistol to fire?
Well, I'll tell you what, the most important thing that we need to be thinking about right now is safety, and making sure that we get through spring in a way that we can be healthy and in good shape at the end. So I think that's what I would encourage folks, both in our agribusiness supply chain and our farmers. Take time to be safe. And for anybody who might be watching or listening, who's not farming directly, but remember that when you see that equipment and those trucks on the road, give them a wide berth. Folks are working long hours. There's a lot of stress, and let's take care of each other and get through this in good shape.
All right. Well, Secretary, we thank you so much for your time for this monthly chat that we have here on the Weekend Ag Matters program.
We'll talk to you next month.
All right. That's Iowa Agriculture Secretary Mike Naig here on Weekend Ag Matters. Brent Barnett will be coming in to wrap things up after this message.